My name's Marta, and in this Red Gaming Tech video I'm here as usual with a collection of tech news from the last 24 or so hours. So, what do I have for you today? Well, AMD have finally found the replacement for Raja Koduri, the European Commission has laid off the smackdown on Qualcomm, and TSMC are probably going to increase the SALT against miners somewhat by what they have revealed about 16nm chips and how much they're selling. So let's begin things with AMD, shall we? Naturally, when Raja Koduri was officially announced to be leaving both AMD and of course RTG, it was pretty big news, and Raja himself has been snapped up by Intel and is going to be leading the new discrete graphics business over there. And of course, someone like that is extremely hard to replace because Raja obviously had dual roles. He was an engineer, but he was also the public face of presenting that technology at things like, Computex and their own conferences with Capsaicin and so on. So AMD have announced today who will be replacing Raja. Now, what's particularly interesting to me is that they have actually replaced him with two people, and I actually think this is a pretty smart decision because you probably saw that letter that was made public that Raja wrote to his employees, and it kind of showed what we'd kind of surmised from what was going on, the immense pressure that he had on his shoulders to carry alone as the chief architect of RTG, who again led both engineering and business sides of the group. So it kind of makes sense to be like, okay, let's not repeat this again and kind of split his job between two people. Again, finding that skill set in one person is pretty rare, so it also makes sense from that perspective as well. So these people are understandably going to be reporting directly to the CEO, Dr. Lisa Su, and obviously they couldn't come soon enough as, of course, 2018, start of a new year, they need to start as strongly as possible, and Nvidia is definitely up in their game when it comes to the competition and the pressure they themselves are putting on AMD as a company. So we've got Mike Rayfield, who is joining as Senior Vice President and General Manager of RTG, and David Wang as Senior Vice President of Engineering at RTG. So Rayfield is going to be doing the business management and strategy for the graphics unit, and that includes consumer and pro graphics as well as semi-custom products, whereas Wang will be responsible for all aspects of graphics engineering, which of course include hardware development, software development, and naturally architecture. So there you have it. Those are the guys that are going to be filling Raja's shoes, or they're each going to be taking a shoe respectively, to stick with that analogy. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what these two actually bring to the table. Definitely going to be curious. Definitely going to be weird seeing, or not seeing, Raja at AMD's upcoming conferences, which are undoubtedly going to be getting this year. But let's move on to our next topic, which of course is Qualcomm. And they have been fined pretty damn substantially by European Commission for their abuse of their dominant market position. So what did they actually do, I hear you ask, and how much were they fined? Well, they were fined 997 million euros for abusing their market dominance in LTE baseband chipsets. So you might go, okay, what is an LTE baseband chipset? Well, they basically enable smartphones and tablets to collect to networks and the use of voice and data transmission, and does comply with 4G standards as well. So a pretty key piece of tech, I'm sure you will agree. So basically what they did is they paid a key customer, who is Apple, significant payments on the condition that they would not buy from rivals. Now, unsurprisingly, this is a tad illegal under EU antitrust laws. So basically, the long and short of it is obviously LTE, well, Apple are Apple, and they naturally make use of LTE, being the fact that they obviously make smartphones and tablets and so on. So back in 2011, Apple and Qualcomm signed an agreement basically saying that Qualcomm were going to make significant payments to Apple on the condition that they would exclusively use Qualcomm chipsets in iPhone and iPads. And in 2013, this agreement was extended to the end of 2016. So yeah, this was going on till pretty recently. And I'll have a bit of a statement here from the Commissioner of the European Commission, Margrethe Vestager, who said, quote, quote rather, Qualcomm illegally shut out rivals from the market for LTE baseband chipsets for over 5 years, thereby cementing its market dominance. Qualcomm paid billions in US dollars to a key customer, Apple, so it would not buy from rivals. These payments were not just reductions in price, they were made on the condition that Apple would exclusively use Qualcomm's baseband chipsets in all its iPhones and iPads. This meant that no rival could effectively challenge Qualcomm in this market, no matter how good their products were. Qualcomm's behaviour denied consumers and other companies more choice and innovation, and this in a sector with huge demand and potential for innovative technologies. This is illegal under EU antitrust rules, and why we have taken today's decision. Now, what's also interesting is that Apple were obviously very much sort of beholden to Qualcomm under this agreement, because obviously if Apple commercially launched a device with a chipset made by a rival, not only would Qualcomm cease the payments, Apple would actually have to return a large portion of the payments that they had actually received if they did decide to switch suppliers. So Apple obviously agreed to this, and that does kind of make them, part of the sort of bad guy story going on here, but they were also kind of like, okay, we're going to get screwed over too, but obviously they shouldn't have agreed to it in the first place because A, it's ridiculously scummy, and B, it's obviously illegal. But obviously the real bad guy here is Qualcomm, because they were like, yeah, do you know what? Let's just stranglehold the market by paying Apple a fuck ton of money because it's Apple. Yeah, that sound good? Now, what's interesting, however, internal documents do show that Apple did seriously consider switching part of their baseband chipset requirements over to Intel. Now, the exclusivity condition that I mentioned just a moment ago is partially why Apple decided against doing so until the agreement came to an end. Obviously, that did so in 2016. Apple then switched part of its baseband chipset requirements to Intel. So until then, Qualcomm basically denied consumers and obviously other companies an actual fair chance at effective competition, and obviously who knows what innovative ideas and inventions they have stifled out of existence simply because other companies just did not stand a chance with this arrangement. So Apple, obviously, once they'd signed this, had no choice, but obviously they didn't exactly feel like, Big Bad Mr. Qualcomm was forcing them to do this because, again, A, they agreed to do this in the first place, and B, they also extended the agreement. So, yeah, Apple do not get a pass on this one, but obviously they did consider breaking it for whatever reason, but they didn't, so yeah. Perhaps they thought maybe this wasn't such a best idea after a while, but it's hard to say. Obviously Qualcomm are the worst ones here, because they're the ones who kind of initiated this from what I can tell, but they both had a share of the blame here, if you ask me. So, now, market dominance in itself is not illegal because you can't help that you're the leader in a certain division of tech or whatever it happens to be. You could be the leader in cups of water and have a dominance on that particular market, but if that's just because your water tastes amazing, then that's not your fault. But it is obviously important that people in that position do not abuse that position by restricting competition. And obviously they gained this powerful market position, or their market position became even more powerful, to be more precise, because they did this. And again, who knows what stuff would have happened had this not been going on? Who knows what ideas just never saw the light of day. So, yeah, this is pretty bad. And you might say, okay, what did the Commission actually say that they discovered Qualcomm to be doing? And as per the statement they read out already, both consumers and competition suffered, and they did take into account when choosing the fine amount, the extent of their dominant position, this being Qualcomm of course, the significant amounts paid by them to Apple in exchange for exclusivity, a broad range of contemporaneous evidence, including internal documents from Apple, that Qualcomm's payments reduced Apple's incentives to switch rivals, the importance of Apple as a customer in the market for LTE baseband chipset suppliers. Apple, understandably, accounts for a significant share of LTEs, on average 1/3, as of course they are one of the leading companies when it comes to the manufacturing of smartphones and tablets, and of course they do and can influence customers and manufacturers' procurement and design choices. And also, Qualcomm did not demonstrate that the exclusivity condition created any efficiencies. So this isn't like a, hey, this will work best for you, so can we kind of agree to work together, but we want you to use our stuff because that'd be nice. This is purely, we just like to control the market, please. We would like lots of money. That's basically it. So the huge amount that they have been fined, which is, to be exact, 997,439,000 euros, takes into account not only the duration, but obviously the seriousness of what they actually did, and is also aimed at deterring anyone who is thinking of having any bright ideas along the similar vein as this. And it also represents 4.9% of their turnover in 2017. So that kind of paints a picture of how huge a mark this made on the market, and obviously how profitable this was for Qualcomm, because, you know, 997,439,000 euros is 4.9% of their turnover in 2017. So yeah, this is pretty serious, and this is the EU Commission coming down hard on Qualcomm for this. And to be honest, they kind of deserve it. Yeah, can't really argue against that, I don't think. So, let's move on to our final piece today, as we have something from TSMC. Now, TSMC, of course, played a huge part in all of NVIDIA's 16nm Pascal and 12nm Volta chips, also going to be getting involved with Apple and their iPhone business. And as I discussed in my video yesterday, they're doing pretty well for themselves. And obviously, TSMC are also happily riding the cryptocurrency wave, because they're also, of course, benefiting from the huge increase in interest in GPUs. But a retailer by the name of Bitmain are making up a huge quantity of TSMC's 16nm node sales. And according to a source of ARK Invest, or employee of that, by the name of James Wang, quote, Bitmain is buying 20k 16nm wafers a month. That's more than NVIDIA. So basically, TSMC are selling more of these 7nm wafers to Bitmain than they are to NVIDIA. That just, I think, paints an extremely clear picture of the insane popularity of cryptocurrency. You know, that picture is already in, like, you know, eye-bleedingly sharp 4K quality, and it's going to go up to 8K next, you know, that sort of thing. Now, obviously, this isn't, you know, crack out the world's tiniest violin, because NVIDIA are having 16nm wafers taken out of their poor little handsies, but obviously, again, this does kind of further show you how rapidly the demand for mining has soared. I mean, in terms of actual revenue in the third quarter of last year, mining sales netted them $350 to $400 million in revenue, according to Bloomberg, and that figure could easily double to around 10% of their revenue this year. So yeah, TSMC obviously have no real reason to turn, you know, this opportunity down, because at the end of the day, they're a company, they're there to make money. I'm sure they're very aware, like we are, that this is a bubble that may or may not burst at any point. So I'm sure they're not just like going all in on cryptocurrency mining or anything, but they're not exactly shy. You know, they're making a huge amount of money from this. You know, again, more sales made to Bitmain than NVIDIA, which is not exactly easy to do given that we're talking about NVIDIA. So once again, the impact of cryptocurrency and the popularity of cryptocurrency is felt, which is an interesting picture to say the least. I mean, I don't think anyone expected the insaneness that's been happening regarding mining and all of that has been going on for the last like few months, or seems like an eternity, to be honest, to happen the way that it has, but here we are. Anyway, that is me done for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.